Shalom. I am Rabbi Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the WebYeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. This week's Torah reading is Parsha Eikev. And the subject of this short talk is, we do not live by bread alone, but only by that which God desires. Just as an overview, it's interesting, one of the many things that are in this Parsha is the recording of Moses that God caused the children of Israel to be hungry by feeding them the manna. The manna, we know, is the bread from heaven that tasted like anything you wanted it to taste like. So how does that equal being hungry? It was given to them every single day. And further, it says, after talking about this bread from heaven, it says, man cannot live by bread alone. It teaches us that everything that happens to us happens by hashgacha pratit, the desire of God, the mouth of God. And then a couple of sentences later, we have the commandment of blessing God when we eat. Birchat hamazon, the grace after meals. And of course that raises the question, because this is the only time in the Torah that it says we should bless God. What does that mean? Does God need our blessing? So these are some of the things we're going to try to hit upon in this short Torah lesson. The Parsha contains the following word. It says, "V'yandach v'yarivcha v'yachilcha esaman." God subjected the children of Israel to the hardship of hunger, and then gave us the manna to eat, to teach. It says, to teach, l'man hodiacha ki lo al lechem levado yichya adam. Teaching us that man doesn't live by bread alone. The Bechor Shor right away asks the question of what's the connection of hunger with the manna? And he answers that, how was the manna delivered to the children of Israel? It was given every single day. Every single day they had to go out to the field and pick up the food. And he says that creates a certain anxiety. There's no comparison to somebody who has bread in his house and somebody who has none and has to go look for it every day. And the test that God is giving us is to see if we will have emunah, faith, understanding that everything comes from God. And he tells us further that God gave us this manna, which our forefathers did not know about, were not acquainted with, to teach us that every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Lord is what causes us to live, not bread alone. And teaches us that we have to put our trust in everything that happens, and this will give us life in the world and the next by whatever God wants to do. He says you shouldn't run after things that are forbidden, but rather keep the commandments. And any affliction that happens is for the good. It looked like we were struggling by having to go out every day to get food, yet it was a good thing. It fed us. And he said, we have to remember that God wants only good for us and wants us to observe the commandments. The Emek Hadavar, Emek Davar says, of this concept of man not living by bread alone, he says that according to this plain sense, the benefit of this knowledge is that there will be times when there's no hope of obtaining bread. And thus, we lose hope of living. So God preemptively gives us the strength to subsist on the utterance of what God says. Because what God says, what God wants to do, that's how we live. And at times, we may lose hope. We should never lose hope, because we should always understand that God will give us the strength and power to exist and to subsist through the following of His Word. The concept of going every day and looking for bread, knowing that God will provide it, and relying on what God does, not only for bread, not only for food, but everything that happens. It's a manifestation of hashgacha pratit, that everything that God does is showing His constant direction of everything that happens in this world. With regard to the commandment of blessing God, the Gemara in Baruch says that anybody who enjoys anything in this world without a blessing, it's as if he steals from the Creator of the world. It's somebody who's like stealing from his parents and saying, that's not a crime. God wants us to have everything, and we acquire what is in this world through blessing God. And then a few sentences later it says, when you have eaten and you're satisfied, give thanks to God for the good land that He has given you. This is, of course, the commandment of Birchat Hamazon, the commandment to say grace after meals, to bless God after eating. And the Rabbeinu Bachai has an interesting take on this. He says the concept of man blessing God instead of vice versa is a strange concept. He says there's nowhere else in the Torah where God commands us to bless His name. And when we bless God for what we've received and enjoyed, he says, what are we doing? We are testifying and acknowledging God's hashgacha, God's benevolence, constant overlooking of what we're doing. The merit we accumulate by such an act of blessing God ensures that God will continue to favor us with His beneficence, with the things He gives us. The produce, the fruit we eat, everything that happens to us will continue to be blessed by God as long as we acknowledge God as the provider. The concept of hashgacha pratit, realizing that everything that happens really comes from God. Oftentimes things happen to us and they look like they're terrible, maybe they feel painful, we don't understand them, but in the end, I've said this many times, we see that it's for our benefit. And Rabbi Biederman brings an interesting story from Rabbi Yosef Lieberman, the Tzal, who's the author of Mishnas Yosef. He talks about he was saved, how he was saved during the Shoah, during the Holocaust. In 1939, he was 9 years old, living in Pressburg, Hungary, and his father was a prosperous wine merchant, and he had plenty of parnasa. He made a good living. One day, this 9-year-old Yosef was walking down one of the streets in Pressburg, and a young non-Jewish boy came up to him, smacked him with all his strength on his face. Yosef began to cry. He was hit in public for absolutely no reason. And when his father, he was humiliated. When his father heard about it, he said, if a child could smack someone for no reason, this is a sign that anti-Semitism has taken root in our country. Our place isn't here anymore. We will go to Eretz Yisrael. The family said, what are you talking about? There's no food in Eretz Yisrael. in Israel. How can we move there? Here we have a living, good parnasa. The father's decision was final. He sold his property and moved with his family to Eretz Israel. So here, a hit on the face from a non-Jewish boy saved an entire family. We should understand that sometimes it feels like God is hitting us, and that will certainly bring our salvation. Hashgacha pratit. Believe that whatever happens is for our good. Thank you for listening. On behalf of WebYeshiva.org, I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.